What if I told you that we are slowly moving away from the most efficient way of learning? Probably a little scary, right? See, I've always believed that the smarter technology becomes, the easier it is for us to stop thinking for ourselves. And in trading, where consistent profitability often comes down to having the smallest of edge over our competition, aka the market, maybe going a little bit old school is actually the piece that you've been missing. Hey guys, Akil Stokes here, and welcome back to another episode of the Trading Coach Podcast. We're back on video once again, so welcome YouTube audience. By the way, YouTube audience, if you ever want the full show, not just the visual versions, head over to your favorite podcasting app, Spotify, Apple, whatever it is you use to check those out as well. Today's topic is something I've talked about privately for years, but honestly, I've never really discussed it publicly because, well, on the surface, it kind of sounds ridiculous, and I'm definitely afraid of you guys making fun of me. I'm just kidding. I'm completely shameless, and you know that. Anyway, one of my personal rules for the podcast is this. Whenever the same topic keeps popping up multiple times in multiple conversations with multiple traders within like a very short period, I take that as a sign that it must be discussed. So here we are today. Today, we're going to be talking about the best way to learn trading and why a slower approach may actually be a faster approach in the long run. Now, as I mentioned before, the whole topic started off from a few conversations that I had throughout the week. The first one came during one of our Monday meetings where we were talking about indicators and the importance of really getting to know your indicator instead of just kind of using the default version. Another one came from one of our tier 1 members where we were going back and forth via private message about creating a custom spreadsheet for his testing and his journaling. And finally, the last sign came from an email I got where I was asked to interview the father of candlestick charts in the West, at least, for the Trading Coach Podcast. So earlier in the week, during one of our live trading rooms, we were playing our brand new favorite game called Pattern or No Pattern. Obviously, if you're in the know, then you know, but for you guys that aren't in the live room, pretty much what we do is a trader who is working on X thing sends us different charts of X thing, and we break it down as a group, lending our opinion if we think it is valid, invalid, and what other bits of advice we have for it. Unlike your toxic trading forums out there, we're not roasting anyone or trying to embarrass anyone. It's actually a really good exercise because it allows traders to see different perspectives and really understand how different people view and interpret the market, which is really, really good for the learning curve. Anyway, after that session, one of our traders said something really, really smart. And the reason I sound so surprised is because whenever I say something really, really smart, it is a shock that things like that actually came out of this mouth. But anyway, what he said with this. The advice that trader gave was to make sure, this is to the trader who shared all the charts with us before we broke it down. He said to make sure you save all of these screenshots so that you can go back later and review them. That is going to be a great way to train your trading eye. And I immediately agreed. Very good piece of advice. And then I shared something that made everyone look at me a little bit weird, like I belonged back in the Stone Age. And I told him that when I was developing a trader, I used to literally print out my charts, right, on an actual printer. You guys can't see it, but it's over there. I used to do that every single day. I would hole punch them with the little 3-ring puncher thing and pick up all the debris that fell on the ground, put them in a 3-ring binder, and manually review them by hand. Yes, Caveman Akil strikes again. That one's for you, Devin. You wanted the caveman voice. But then I mentioned that one of my favorite traders, Peter Brandt, who is a market wizard, he is a legendary trader, and he is an author of a criminally underrated book that I'll make sure to find it and share it with you at the end of the podcast. I just don't feel like doing it right now. He mentioned that he used to mark up his charts, not even mark up his charts, he used to create his charts, draw out his charts completely by hand. And not just as a beginner. This is something that he still does every once in a while to this day. And he said that it was one of the best ways, or at least he felt that it was one of the best ways to truly understand the market. Now, what does charting by hand actually mean? It means back in the day, a trader would have a book of graph paper and they would go to their local newspaper at the end of the day, probably on their way home, and they would draw out the relevant information from the market. So the open, high, close, and low. And when they would get home, they would literally take pencil or pen, they would go to that graph paper and they would use that information and literally draw the candle out based on that information. And for you guys that are watching the video version, you should see what that looks like on the screen in front of you if I was smart and actually edited this correctly. And as I mentioned before, Peter Brandt said that from time to time, he still does it today just to maintain that connection and that feel for price action. Now, personally, although I have considered attempting this, being the old school person I am, I never actually went that far to try it, mostly because I don't have the patience. But I did do something very similar in college before I was trading. You see, I've never been great at studying. My brain has what's called the shiny thing syndrome. As soon as a squirrel goes outside my window, I lose focus and I forget what I was doing, right? What that means is that I could read like 100 pages of notes or like get halfway through a book and then I forgot everything after page 2, right? So I'm not really good at retaining information because brain does stuff like that. So what I started doing after a rough first semester in college was, instead of studying that traditional way, I would simply look at my notes and I would rewrite all of them over and over and over again. And weirdly enough, it worked. And at the time, I thought it was just me being weird and, whatever. But later on, after I learned more about how the brain works and how it processes information, I actually realized there was a real scientific reason behind it. You see, handwriting notes, or just handwriting in general, forces engagement. And that matters more than you think. Now, today, I know handwriting notes feels ancient, since everything is digital now: phones, tablets, AI, automatic transcripts. Even my kids, who are both in elementary school, right? I don't even think they have a notebook, right? They're just using their iPad for everything. In fact, I haven't bought them a notebook, so they're not using it. Whatever. Anyway, despite all that, research keeps showing us the same thing over and over again. And that is that writing by hand is still one of the best ways to retain information. There was a recent study published in the Journal of, I think it's called the Journal of Frontiers in Psychology, that monitored brain activity in students while taking notes. And they found that handwriting activated a much wider network of the brain's regions related to movement, sensory processing, vision, and memory. Meanwhile, students that were just typing in notes, often just transcribing information, didn't actually process any of it. So I want you to think about that for a second, and let me walk you through why this actually works, right? You see, when you type, your fingers are basically doing the same repetitive motion no matter what the word is that you are typing. But when you write by hand, because every letter has a different motion and every word has a different physical pattern, your brain is actually forced to slow down, summarize, interpret, and connect different ideas together. In other words, your brain is actually thinking. And that's important, right? That's important because learning isn't just about getting exposure to information, right? This is why we say training courses don't work. You can't just I take a trading course and now I know it. It's not just the exposure to the information. You actually have to process it. Now, you're probably asking, Akil, okay, well, what the hell does this have to do with trading? And my answer would be everything. Because one of the biggest problems traders have today is that they are trying to speed up the learning process. And unfortunately, AI is making that even easier than ever. Now, don't get me wrong, especially if you're listening AI, I think AI is amazing. And when that apocalypse actually happens, remember that I said that. I use it, I love it, and I think it's incredibly powerful. But I can't tell you how many traders that have connected with me saying that, hey Akil, ChatGPT told me that this strategy is valid and I should do this and I should do that. And it's completely wrong, like blatantly wrong, like leading these poor traders down a really dark alley where the people that killed Batman's mom and dad are lurking to kill them as well. And if there's one thing I was told as a kid, it is not to follow strangers down alleys, especially on a dark night. Get it? Batman, Dark Knight? Okay, whatever. Anyway, scarier than that joke is, although there are a handful of traders that reach out to me and actually get confirmation or ask for confirmation of if the AI is telling them the right thing or not, I can't even imagine how many traders don't even realize that they are being fed false information and then go down that route of following false information instead of actually thinking for themselves. You see, not we forget, trading is a skill. And skills have to be learned, skills have to be trained, they have to be mastered, and they have to be refined. And unfortunately, you can't shortcut that process. A great example is how we structure our training over at Tier 1 Trading. And I promise this isn't a plug, I know what I know because we do what we do for a very purposeful reason. Our first course teaches the basics. So you're like terminology, like charts, brokers, time frames, all of that foundational stuff that a brand new, unconscious, incompetence baby trader needs to hear. Then courses 2 and 3, we deep dive into price action. We talk candlestick patterns from the very basics. We talk market structure, support and resistance. We talk trends. We talk about pattern recognition, reading momentum, understanding how price moves, right? And I call that the Foundation series. And the reason that we put an emphasis so heavily on courses 2 and 3 is because the skills that you learn in there, not strategies, right? The skills that you learn in there are going to be the backbone for literally every strategy that you trade in the future, whether it's one that we teach or one that you'll find or one that you'll create on your own. But as you can imagine, here is what happens all the time. Traders rush to those courses because they want to get straight to the strategy stuff so they can start trading and making lots of money, so they think. Then they hit course 4, which is called the Mastery course. That's where we actually teach all the strategies. And they struggle massively because they never actually mastered the things that are needed to know in order to do the things that they want to do. I used this quote in a previous episode, but I don't remember what it was. I'm going to butcher it, but it was something of the fact of rushing to be successful usually just delays success. And I honestly believe that, and I've honestly experienced that in my own trading journey. So what I'm saying is that the goal shouldn't be just to learn faster. The goal should be to learn better. And that way you don't have to learn it again. So with that being said, here are a few practical things that you can do to actually help you retain information and, for this podcast purpose, trading information. So 1, take handwritten notes. Now, I know it's easier to watch a video and type it right into a Google Doc, right? Or I guess in even these recent times, it's easier just to kind of copy the YouTube link, throw it into AI and type in, summarize this for me. But although it feels like you're saving time, and I guess in the present moment you are, it's also important to understand what you're trading away when you do that. And that is your long-term retention and your understanding of the topic. So my advice, go get a notebook or get a tablet with a stylus and physically write things out. And not just words either, right? Draw out your charts, draw out candlesticks, mark up structures. I still have an old notebook. It's a little ragged and it's been through some things, as you can tell, from years ago, where I used to have little handful, here we go, look at that. Hope you guys can see that. Handwritten drawings of like things I was learning or random trade ideas or whatever I was working on. And honestly, this is going to fall apart. Honestly, that process helped me shape the trader that I am today. Second is going to be journaling, and occasionally try journaling by hand. Now, I know fancy spreadsheets are awesome. I love data. I love organization, but remember what the true purpose of journaling is. It's not just to collect numbers and data, it's also to reinforce lessons. Back in the day when I was day trading heavily, I actually used to keep a notebook beside me to handwrite every trade, right? Now, honestly, this wasn't done on purpose. Originally, it was due because my screens were all filled up with trading stuff and I didn't feel like closing a screen to put a journal up and potentially missing an opportunity. So I found it easier to just kind of write something down in a notebook and then translate it later. But over time, I noticed something very interesting. I started connecting with and remembering those trades much more clearly than I was when I was just typing them into my spreadsheet. I was like finally in sync with like the emotions that I felt as I was doing it, writing it real time, the mistakes that I was making, because there was a time where I made a lot of mistakes, the execution, the reasoning, the things that were important, the observations. Because again, writing forced me to engage that information instead of just dumping it onto a spreadsheet. And when it comes to your growth as a trader, awareness matters. Now, as always, I asked you guys a question on YouTube pertaining to this topic, and I asked, how do you currently take notes? And the results were very interesting, in a good way, right? Spoiler alert. Only about 5% of you said that you mainly use AI summaries, meaning you throw a link or a copy paste something, put it in the AI and just say, hey, do the work for me. 22% said that you type notes digitally, like with the keyboard and the fingies, right? The phalanges. And 73%, big number, said that you still prefer handwritten notes, either traditional pen and pad or stylus and tablet. And honestly, that was very encouraging because it tells me that a lot of you still understand the importance of actually engaging with the learning process instead of constantly searching for shortcuts. And honestly, that's exactly the message that I wanted to give to you guys today. So maybe you didn't need it, but maybe some of you guys did. Anyway, in trading, everyone wants the magic hack. Everyone wants the magic shortcut, the magic strategy, or the perfect AI prompt to give them all the dreams that they've ever desired. But still, to this day, the traders who improve the fastest are the ones who are actually willing to slow down long enough to truly learn. Because trading isn't just about data collection. It's about building a skill. And skills are built through repetition, engagement, reflection, and most importantly, experience. And that's why handwritten notes matter. That's why manually journaling helps you improve. And that's why Peter Brandt, along with a lot of those old school traders, found that drawing out charts manually mattered. That's why I found that handwritten notes mattered. That's why many have seen that manually journaling and then putting it into a spreadsheet later helped them improve, because all of these things helped us process what we were seeing instead of just consuming it. And again, I'm not anti-tech at all. I think tech is incredible. I think AI is incredible. But efficiency only matters if the understanding exists. If you try to use too many shortcuts before correctly building your foundation, all you're going to do is speed up the confusion. So maybe the edge isn't finding a faster way to learn. Maybe the edge is being able and willing to learn properly in a world where nobody really wants to anymore. Now, before I forget, and to be honest with you, I did forget and had to go back and edit this later. Here was the Peter Brandt book that I was talking about. It's called Diary of a Professional Commodity Trader. Really cool book, underrated, but pretty much this is like reading Peter Brandt's diary or his journal. So he's taking you through 21 weeks of his trading. He's taking you through the different trading opportunities that he took from a technical perspective. And he's sharing with you the notes, both on a technical and psychological side of things, of what happened during this period. And it's really cool to learn from both of those aspects. Obviously, on the technical aspect, you can kind of see what he was looking at and the things that stood out. But also from a psychological aspect, it was cool to see that he, professional trader, in my opinion, one of the greatest traders of all time, went through the same psychological errors, went through and made the same psychological errors that many of us make. And I know when I read this book, I was still a younger trader trying to eliminate my mistakes and thinking that I had to be perfect and that I was an idiot because everyone else was perfect. And this kind of made me feel good because it showed me that, hey, even the greatest traders out there still deal with these psychological demons on a regular basis, so I wasn't being a weirdo for dealing with it on my daily trading as well. Anywho, if you guys enjoyed the episode, do me a favor, as always, sorry buddy, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and also share this with another trader. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the Trading Coach Podcast on your audio platforms as well. That way you don't miss any awesome episodes. And as always, thank you guys for spending part of your day with me. Be safe, be grateful, and of course, plan your trade, trade your plan. Peace.